I'm going to call the meeting to order. Let's start with a quick prayer from Connor, please. Okay, let's salute the flag. 1, 2, ready, commence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes. Chairman Rines,
Present.
Vice Chair Davis,
Present.
Board Member Allen,
Present.
Board Member Alford,
Present.
Board Member Jones.
Okay, first order of business. Do we have some meeting minutes we need to approve? Okay. Do you want to call for a vote online or?
I move to approve the January 26th and September 18th board minutes.
Second.
Board Member Alford? Yes, please.
Yes.
Board Member Allen,
Approve.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
Chairman Rines.
Yes. Do we have any other admin items? Okay. All right. Very good. So we will move on to item number 1. Possible approval for a variance from the Durant Municipal Code 158.08, monument sign larger than maximum area height. The sign shall have a maximum area of 32 square feet. The property is located on 810 Walden Road. Paul, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah. Good afternoon, gentlemen. We get the honor of your company 2 weeks in a row. This is from Kai Mitchie Tech. They're wanting to put a larger monument sign than what they have up out there. I think the idea is to be able to visibly see it from South 9th a little better than what they currently have. The current sign ordinance, the maximum sign area for a sign is 100 square feet total of all sides, with a 6 foot tall height maximum for monument signs. According to the plans, the proposed dimensions for their sign area will be 228 square feet per side, with 19 foot tall and about 13 foot wide is what they're looking to do there.
So this would be a variance, if approved, of more than twice the size of sign that would otherwise be allowed by ordinance.
Correct. And they do on their and we've got someone here with KTC, but on the facility on East Main, there was a similar sign installed there from them. I don't think it's quite 19 foot tall. I don't know the dimension on that one. It is larger than the standard monument sign that's allowed. I don't know when that was done, but yes, this would be double the allowed signage. So.
We're talking about that property on the east side that we came to us, that sign that was approved by variance.
Yep.
Was that Kai Mitchie as well, I believe?
Correct.
Okay. Question about this one. I'm somewhat familiar with the sign ordinance. Is there any exception or any type of anything specifically addressed about being in an industrial park? Isn't this an industrial park area that they're in out there?
Yeah, all out there, short of the property that to the south is all industrial, I-1. To be honest with you, there is some variances to the zonage for industrial. I don't know them right offhand. I know it does change quite a bit. That is something I probably honestly should have looked at beforehand.
But those variances aren't for signs or are?
They would be related to the signage. So I know the signs requirement does change per the zoning of the land, so.
So do we know for sure that what we've said that the requirement is applies to industrial area?
To my knowledge, it doesn't change to that scale for industrial on monument signs. That's more related to post signs and wall signage. I know that changes. To my knowledge, I haven't seen anything as far as monument signs go.
We're talking about an area though that's, to my knowledge, is all industrial, all very large buildings.
Yes.
I guess maybe in my consideration, I don't know that I would even compare it to anything on Main Street. You know,
Oh yeah, you couldn't really. The sign I was bringing up was just in reference to they do have a similar sign that's already erected here in town. So.
well, I guess where I'm going with that, it just, as we work through the 4 questions, maybe we consider the fact that we're not driving down Main Street here.
Exactly.
We're looking at an industrial park.
Industrial
with
zone. It
larger
won't create
buildings.
a site triangle violation. It won't create any site hazards. Where it's located is actually a pretty good sized area, and the sign would probably realistically look more natural with the larger sign in that size area. So
I think we do need to, as a city, if it's not addressed, we do need to take back from this is, you know, what are the sign variations on where it is? Because obviously, in my opinion, something in an industrial park shouldn't be the same guidelines of, you know, driving down Main Street or even
I agree 100%.
some of our schools that are in residential areas. And so if we haven't addressed that, we might want the Planning Zoning Commission at least to take a look at that, or someone.
I agree.
And is the intent to be signed on both sides, or just on the face?
It will. Is it just the face, or is it both sides? Be both sides.
The existing sign is.
Can you approach?
My name is Michael Riley. I'm the architect for Comanche Tech. And here's a picture of the one on Main Street. And I agree, it may be a bit larger than now in retrospect. But this is the same size that this one is proposed to be at the main campus. But the existing sign is roughly 30 feet wide, and I think it's 3 or 4 feet tall. So it is already over the sign limit size. The new one will only be, got it posted on the page here. The new one will only be, well, it's got some landscaping involved too, but the sign itself is only 13 feet wide, and then it goes from 17 feet to 19 feet on the top of the slope. The idea is just to, like you said, to make it more visible, since that's a broad area. And it would be just a few feet in front of where the existing sign is currently located. That way we're out of the electrical easement and everything that's at the back of that area.
I'd say you're probably competing with some already large signs out there as well, right?
Right. Comanche Tech has tried really hard over the last few years to bring all of their facilities up to the same image. They're trying to get with a kind of a corporate identity, so all their campuses look similar and all their materials are top notch. And having some stone and ephes out there, it's going to look a little better than just the banner that's hanging on the old sign now. That's what they're hoping for, anyway.
So in theory, what is the hardship created if we fail to approve a variance?
Well, the existing sign is just aesthetically not pleasing. It's harder to see because it's low to the ground and spread out. So.
And Mike's referring to the 4 questions. Do you have the 4 questions?
I do. I was trying to
I
find
think
them
that
here.
was question number 1
Okay.
that he's moving us to, which is good.
Yep.
We do need to work through those 4 questions and determine, we've got to as a board, we're held to those 4 questions and making
Mhm.
some type of affirmative response to each one for us to be able to provide our
Mhm.
approval. So hardship, anybody else want to expand on that or have any other thoughts? I mean, I would think that if we're talking about the current sign in disrepair and we're trying to improve it and we've got we know we have other signs that we're competing with, grabbing people's attention out there, that there's some things maybe to consider there. But
I think another hardship possibly would be the brand standard. If they're trying to get a brand standard throughout all their properties, this kind of is a hardship if it doesn't meet their brand standard.
Is there any hardship that is not of a financial nature associated with a failure to grant this variance?
Not of a financial nature. I think the brand standard is the biggest thing, just that of the aesthetic.
I think when we talked about this last time on the other campus too, our discussion led us to signage like what we have at Southeastern,
Mhm.
comparable type of properties around town. You've got the university. We're talking about how big is that building out there?
The building's pretty big. It's pretty sprawling.
Yeah.
Getting bigger.
Yeah.
Takes up a big area. I know when we talked about the signage at First United Bank, that was something that we considered as a 3-story building that takes up a whole city block. Should the sign be the same size as, a small retail store? Those are things that we can consider. Mike, you want to move us on to the
Mhm.
second one?
Is there anything special or particular about the property on which the sign would be built in terms of its size, its location adjacent to the road, its comparison to the rest of locations in town?
Well, it is on kind of a sweeping curve, if you're familiar with it, and that's why the intention is for it to be 2-sided so that no matter which way you're coming from it, you can see one side or the other. Yeah, you can see it there. I don't know how peculiar that is. I think most of the signs in town are more perpendicular to the street, which that is to that curve. It's perpendicular to the curve.
I think something we would consider too is back to that industrial park. We're talking about a area of town that is specific to large warehouse type buildings.
Right.
Yeah, you got 2 residential homes out there, and the rest is all industrial. Everything out there is industrial.
Mhm.
And I will say the first couple of times I came to this campus years ago, I almost missed it because it's kind of set back, and if those trees are, if it's summertime or springtime, you really don't notice it as well. So it kind of helps to catch your attention and say, hey, the campus is back here.
Does our ordinance allow us to put signs on the building? And is there a percentage of the surface of the building that the sign has to comply with?
There is. You can do it's called a wall sign, but it is, I don't want to say it's very restrictive on the size, but there is a certain coverage that you're allowed, and you're only allowed 1 per building. So for all of Comanche, they'd only be allowed 1 wall sign.
And do they currently have one?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe so.
I think they took it down a few years ago when they started this rebranding process
Mm.
because it was KTC, and they've since gone to Comanche Tech,
Mm.
changed the logos and things.
Is there any reason it wouldn't be easier just to go back to the wall sign as opposed to?
Is there any reason why it wouldn't be easier just to go back to the wall sign as opposed to building a whole new sign that requires a separate variance?
It would certainly be cheaper, but I think it would be harder to see from the road because it's so far back and with the trees growing and everything.
Do we know, Paul, was this sign ordinance, was it reviewed when we did the comprehensive plan? Like how archaic is this rule?
To be 100% honest, it's archaic enough that I have been on pushing to have it redone completely.
Mm.
I've been working on looking at other cities and kind of doing some copy paste to build a more modern sign ordinance.
Yeah. I would definitely agree that that's something. I mean, we've seen several of these come through. I mean, if we're as a city okay with some of this stuff, it's like, for instance, if you're okay with this sign, then we need our codes to match what our thought process is.
So particular to this piece of property, the existing sign you said is not in compliant with the current ordinance?
Not, well, it's, there, we don't have a width regulation. It is very long, the existing sign, would you say it's 30-something feet long?
Yeah, if you scale up a drawing, this is 20, it's probably 30 feet
Height-wise,
wide.
it's not really not much over our maximum, but it is very, I mean, it's almost like a hurdle at a track meet. It's very low to the ground. Doesn't use up a lot of the space. There's not a lot of landscaping around it. I will say, as far as the proposed sign, it would look more aesthetically pleasing out there. The landscaping, the sign itself, the architecture behind the sign would look a lot more.
Right, so for this particular piece of property, abandonment of a sign that is not in compliant now with a new sign that is not in compliant, that would be particular to this piece of property.
Correct.
And I will mention too that part of the remodel project that is about to happen, they're going to add some stone to the columns that are out there right now, which will match the stone on this sign. So the goal is to make it all look kind of the same.
The third of the 4 questions requires that we make sure that we don't impair the public good even if we do grant a variance. Is there anything particularly distracting about this sign, or because of its size, which would exceed the normal ordinance restrictions? Would it obscure the visibility of traffic around this turn or anything along those lines?
No, sir. The way that it's held back from the actual intersection, you can still pull up to the intersection and look around. And as far as the materials and everything, it should be more attractive than what's there. So in my opinion, it would actually be a benefit to have this as opposed to not having this.
That was one of my initial concerns, was the side triangle. After going out there and stepping this off and looking, there is no impairment to any of the traffic that would be oncoming or.
So you're saying you were originally concerned, but you went and did a site visit, and now you're no longer concerned.
Correct.
Okay.
And our current ordinance for side triangle is 25 foot back. It's a 25-foot triangle back from where the 2 roads intersect, and this will be well outside of that side triangle.
The 4th question that we're supposed to ask is, if the variance is granted, would it be the minimum necessary to alleviate the hardship that we identified in the first question? Things like brand standards, things like other variances have been granted for other signage, that type of thing. Would this be the minimum necessary to alleviate unnecessary hardship?
I think, unless you can think of anything else, I think this would be the only exception we would need for this project, because your Okie safety plan review people have already been looking at the building plans for the remodel portion of the project, and I haven't heard of any issues that he's come up with on that. Really, the size and height of the sign are the only things I've heard of as being an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So the variance is specifically to the size of the sign.
Yes, sir.
Are the signs present at other Kiamachi Tech locations all of the exact same proportions? Are they all the same size? Is that uniform?
They are. Well, I take that back. Atoka is slightly different. I think it may be a little bit shorter, and it has a different color stone. But the one at the Center for Workforce here in Durant is the same. The one in Poto is very similar. Each one is just slightly different depending on what stonework was available. And in some cases, how close it was to the highway, it may be slightly smaller or slightly bigger. But this is the standard we try to use in all cases.
Okay, so your concern is brand standard, and this is the standard proportion.
Right.
So you need this variance to meet that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Is this the largest of all those buildings?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to go back to our question number 3 just for a minute. I know you're going to have an LED, possible LED in the future. We're kind of concerned with visual pollution as well.
Mm-hmm.
Is this going to be Kiamish programming on there, or is this going to be advertising for whoever wants to pay?
It would be their programming. So in other words, it would be upcoming programs or short-term classes, or I know the one in Poto had a baking thing that was one night, and my wife took her daughter to do cookies one day during the summer, things like that. It wouldn't be ads for random businesses. It'd be Kiamichi specific.
Would this be a moving image or static?
They have not determined that yet.
Okay. So then I guess my question is kind of builds off of that. We don't have a concern about line of sight, but you mentioned it's on a curve. Will there be a potential for distracting drivers as they come around the curve?
There will be I don't know the correct term for it, but we do have an ordinance based on the amount of illumination a sign can give off, and if it supersedes that, then they will have to go in and have that turned down to where it's not distracting these drivers.
So in terms of wording, if we were to make a motion, this would be a 128 square foot total sign area variance and a 13-foot sign height variance. Is that accurate?
I believe it's 13 foot long, but it's at its tallest point, it's 19 foot tall at the front and 17 foot tall at the back.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you a more accurate area. So it's actually 234 square feet per side.
The application says 228.
Yeah, that's what I read.
Oh, 228. I'm counting the masonry at the
Yeah.
bottom. 228. Yeah.
So it'd be 228 times 2, both sides, correct? Or 228?
It's a total square foot of the total sign area.
Okay.
And the ordinance says the maximum's 100 square foot total sign area. So if we're talking about the difference between 100 and 228, then that's 128 variance square foot.
So you said you were counting masonry. The numbers in the request don't reflect the masonry around the sign?
The masonry is an extra 6 inches on the bottom of the sign, but it doesn't go all the way up. It's only masonry around the bottom to protect against lawnmowers and things like that.
So does the ordinance, my understanding is the ordinance applies to the total sign space, and that would include the masonry.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would have to include that in the size of the variance we give.
That's correct.
So then with the masonry on top of what's requested, what is the total need?
It would then go to the 134 square foot that he's seen. The numbers that I pulled were just off the plan that were submitted, so.
So 134 square foot of variance above the 100 that's allowed by ordinance, and 13 vertical feet of variance compared to the 6 that's allowed by ordinance.
So is the future, is it a digital sign that we're going to
Yes,
put on
sir.
there? Is the future
LED.
digital sign outside of code as well, or size-wise? Or does it meet the 32 square feet?
It's 5 by 10, so.
That being 5 by 10, it's gonna meet, it won't need the variance included in it.
It'll be over, right? Because it's supposed to be only 32,
32 square foot,
and that one's going to be 50.
so it'll need the,
But
So-
they haven't purchased it yet, so if you tell them they have to do
yeah,
32,
we
they
can
can.
make that one 32
So
square foot.
today we are just talking about this. We're
Just
not.
the- yeah,
We're
just
not
the-
talking about the digital sign is not included in this variance
Correct.
today. Okay.
Let me make the motion.
Sure.
I move to call a vote on the approval or non-approval of a variance totaling 134 square foot variance above the 100 square foot allowed by ordinance, and 13 vertical feet in addition to the 6 feet allowed by ordinance.
Second.
Board Member Alford,
No.
Board Member Allen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
Chairman Rhines.
Yes. Okay, variance approved. All right, we are going to move on to the second one. Consideration and possible approval for requesting a variance from the Durant Municipal Code 156.035, District Regulations R2, Family Residential District Lot Area, minimum of 80 feet for a duplex. Paul, you want to run us through this one?
Yes, they've recently went before council. They're looking to do some townhome style duplexes. I think there's I don't know, was there a picture of the design submitted to the?
There is.
The current zoning for that area is R2. R2 requires a frontage of 80 feet in order to construct a duplex. R3 only requires a 70-foot for the same structure. So they had originally sought a rezone to go to R3 in order to build the duplex on the vacant lot. That was denied due to concerns of spot zoning. Once that was denied, they expressed a desire to go before the board to seek a variance in order to build the duplex in the R2 zoning while only having the frontage of 70 feet. So they'll be 10 foot shy of the required frontage. Everything else from setbacks to lot size is all met. The only thing that wasn't met was the frontage, the lot frontage. So.
And am I reading correctly that the staff recommendation here is to affirm this?
Correct. In Durant, we have, and I know this isn't part of the meeting, but we have so many empty lots throughout town, and they're empty because of these lot sizes or these lot frontages. Everything else can be met. The setback requirements can be met. The building coverage can be met. Everything can be met except these frontages. And as much as I would love to see single family resident go up on every vacant lot we have, just because from a building inspector standpoint, economically, we're just not in a place where the average person can go out and buy a home, let alone build a new home. So in order to fill these vacant lots, you kind of rely on these developers to come in with your duplexes and multifamilies in order to utilize those lots. So.
Yeah, let me just address that real quick, because I think that's a valid concern for the city. And my response back from the Board of Commissioners back to the city is we need to address that in our code. I mean, if that is
also
our,
currently working on that as well.
I mean, if that's what we want to do as a city is to fill these, we've got to change the code and not rely on the Board of Adjustments to do variances on
Well,
every one of them.
I've yet to get an answer, and I know all this stuff was done before any of us were here, but I'm not really understanding why a 70-foot is required for a duplex in R2, or 80 foot in R2, and you just move to an R3, and all of a sudden you add 10 foot to that required frontage.
Right.
You know, same structure, same everything, just a larger frontage on the, you know, that one really doesn't make much sense to me, to be honest with you.
So I do have a question then. And this is kind of my concern with the other one as well. Is there a reason why the appropriate way to address this situation is to request a variance and not to say go to the proper avenues and request and try to change the actual code to fix the problem long term?
To be honest with you, that's a very valid point. The only issue is getting these codes changed and approved is a very lengthy process. We're currently working with a code writer, but I don't know if that could be a year from now before any of that's done. And there's a lot that can take place within that time frame. I agree with you that with both of y'all that moving forward, a lot of this stuff, if we see these issues reoccurring, okay, it's time to change our code. But right now, unfortunately, as it stands, this is the current code, and I'm but one man, and so.
Those comments aren't directed just at you as a city.
Oh, no, I
whole.
completely.
If our goal is to address this issue of these lots, then we need to write our laws and regulations to
I
meet our
100%
goals.
agree with that.
So would you say then that the time it would take to go the route of changing the code as opposed to requesting an ordinance would then tie into creating a particular hardship for the property?
Correct.
If you You need to approach.
Yes, please approach.
What I need to know is where is the front, when you've got this building, how are they gonna face and where they're gonna face and how they're gonna have an entrance to it?
The front, this is for the zone, this is for the one piece of property, this isn't for
I
the
know,
three
it's
lot.
right across the street from
It
me.
abuts
I
the
definitely
streetage
know.
that runs in front of it, and it'll be facing that
What
street.
way?
Yeah.
See,
Can we
because
get
all
some,
of
can
the
we get some clarity on the
properties
parties
is
involved in this
everything in
conversation?
regard to it. It's only
So,
the-
yeah, who are you, ma'am? You're the neighbor? Is that what?
I have lived in this, at that house 54 years. The lady down the street's lived longer, and she was supposed to be here tonight. She didn't get here. But I need to know, where are you gonna come in and out when you have a house right there next to where you're gonna build it? There's another person with a smaller house, because the lady that sold all this property, it all belonged to her mother. Anyway, I just see, you see Mississippi Street? You see
Yes,
it,
that's what-
okay?
that's what it-
Okay, now, where are you
frontage.
if you build, is it gonna be 70 feet this way? And then how long that way?
No, what we're discussing here is the frontage of the
know.
property has to be 70 feet, not the structure.
Well, that's what
We are
I'm trying
just
to say.
discussing, yeah.
I know.
The house will set back from the road 30 feet is where it'll be built off the road.
I know, but I'm wondering how they're gonna park, where they're gonna park.
The driveway that's on the proposed plan there.
Where is the driveway?
It abuts Mississippi there, to the
Okay.
north.
And there's a house right next door to it. You're not gonna have, how many feet between that house and this?
We only require 5,
5 feet?
property line. Setback off property line's 5 feet.
Anyway, there's a lot of, and they're gonna build down there below because they're trying to get a rezoning for R3 also.
Well, we're not discussing that
I know
property
they're
tonight.
not
This is
now,
just
but I'm
that
trying to
single
say
lot.
This is gonna be, what this is gonna do is open up for that other two. And, it really, it just gets me how they're gonna, if they're gonna have that many in there, that drive's not gonna be big enough for, usually people in a family has 2 cars each.
Ma'am, could you please, just for the record, state your name?
Helen Gray.
Helen Gray. Okay, and do you live across the street or next?
I have the property, well, what do you call those, the plant that's across there, that's across the street.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about,
The industrial
weed
facilities.
plant, the weed plant.
Okay, sure.
Okay, will that give you a variance of where it is? Okay, and then there's a house across, and then I'm across the brick house, over across here. And then there's a lady that has this property right next door, they're gonna butt this right up to.
Okay.
But she's not getting it out yet.
And
But
is,
she's not in town.
is it your desire to make it known?
I just want to know, I know how much, I'm gonna have to deal with.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, I'm old and I'm gonna die and I'm not gonna be there that long, but yes, but I'm gonna give it to my granddaughter. So, anyway, I just wonder about how much space they're gonna be out in the street, and it's a very narrow street. They're gonna have to park out in the street, is what I'm trying to say.
So do you have the desire to make it known to the committee that you have concerns that this will negatively impact you or the neighborhood?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the only, I love having our properties being adjusted with nice stuff like this, but I just want some of these things to be, addressed. I'm not against fixing the neighborhood.
Did we receive any formal responses on our letters?
Not in the packet.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank-
And I'm sorry, that's my concern. Okay?
Thank you.
And I would like to point out, I don't know if it'll ease her mind, the lot total area is 10,500 square foot. The maximum square footage of that area required to do what they're wanting is only 8,000 square foot. So it's actually 2,500 square foot larger than what's required of that.
Is it accurate to say that the adjacent properties are all different sizes?
I have not measured the adjacent properties.
I'm looking at the vicinity map, and it looks like the lot to the south is awkwardly shaped and much bigger, and the lot to the north is square-shaped and much bigger, and this one's more rectangular, sandwiched between two different-sized lots. We see the blocks there, but not necessarily the lots. I'm just wondering if that doesn't contribute to making the property a little bit peculiar. Are there any other duplexes in the neighborhood?
I would say the nearest duplexes are on South 5th. There was a set of duplexes recently constructed. Man, now that you ask me a question, I should know where every one of them are. There's duplexes on South 4th. There's a set on 4th, and I want to say Louisiana. There's a set. So there are in the general vicinity, but not, I wouldn't say within a block.
Mm-hmm.
But to clarify, duplex is perfectly fine zoning-wise. It just doesn't meet the
frontage.
I
The
mean,
zoning, that's what I'm saying. This particular build meets every qualification except that property frontage.
Right.
So this, so we were presented with this sheet that has a whole bunch of different, in this neighborhood, I'm gonna call it a neighborhood, there's a whole series of R2 and then spot R3.
Yeah, that was, and I would like to point out that when we took this to the council, they did not have this particular map. They just had it zoomed in, so all they saw was this little circle here. They didn't see all these R3 zones. I don't know if that affected the voting in that category or not, but that was something we had noticed after the fact.
I think that is interesting. So we've got a property that we were turned down from the original to the council because of spot zoning, and there's spot zoning all around it.
Yeah, I think when I counted about 28 R3 zones on
Doesn't
the
that
south
create
side
a picture?
alone. 14 from South 9th over to this location.
So when we look at question number 1, that we are supposed to analyze this by, one of the perceived hardships is that this lot would be treated, if we denied the variance, substantially differently than other lots fairly close by in the neighborhood that have not been treated with that kind of hardship.
Correct.
Okay. Second question are the conditions peculiar to the particular piece of property involved? We identified earlier that it's differently shaped than the adjacent properties. Is there anything else that's peculiar or interesting or different about this lot as opposed to other lots in terms of this type of build that would be on it?
But tell us who you are.
Xavier de la Tujol. I'm the owner of the lot
Mhm.
and seeking the variance. So thank you for meeting this evening. But all the questions have been asked. I do have answers.
Mhm.
But yeah, such conditions are particular because the current situation allows for a duplex in R3. And as we've stated, the local lots around have been treated in a way that allows for buildings to be rezoned. The more popular is single-family homes being built on 50-foot lots instead of 60-foot. So that's the reason they were rezoned R3. And there's duplexes in the area, like he mentioned, and spot zoning over on South 5th. And I have a list of examples and pictures, but yeah, it's peculiar because
So the zoning that the council turned down was just changing it from R2 to R3, which qualifies completely at R3 had they approved that. And we've got R3 in the same city block.
Yeah, R3 is what I was speaking, where that frontage rings down to 70 feet for some reason versus the 80 foot for R2.
I think at a minimum too, I'm trying to just keep us obviously learning from this too. We probably need to take that back to them as consideration going forward, that we look at that.
In regard to impairing purposes of the ordinance, let me ask this, because we can't impair the overall purposes of the ordinance. Is there any concern that this build on this property, if we were to grant the minimum variance to allow this build, Is there any problems with easements, any problems with access, any problems with the kind of the area around the property that the city would need to access and maintain, utilities would need to access and maintain?
No, sir. There is an alley that runs at the rear of the property. It's not really used much as an alley, but it is still considered an alley.
Okay. Any other possible harms to public good if we were to grant the variance?
No, I believe everything, it falls in line with the comprehensive plan.
And am I right to say that this would be a 10-foot variance for the frontage?
Correct.
Precisely 10 foot?
Exactly.
And that's the minimum necessary to alleviate the hardship?
Correct.
And it's not in either of your opinion that this would negatively impact the adjacent lots or the people that live there?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think positively impacting as far as, I know, trying to stay away from financial, but it would positively as far as, overall property value to have not be living next to an empty lot versus having utilized structures.
I move to approve the variance and call for a vote for the approval or non-approval of a variance of 10 foot for the frontage of the property on the agenda.
Second.
Board Member Alford,
Yes.
Board Member Allen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis.
Yes.
Chairman Rhines.
Yes.
Thank you.
Variance approved. Any other business items? We have a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Board Member Alford,
Nay. No, I'm just kidding. Yes.
Board Member Allen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis.
Yes.
Chairman Rhines.
Yes.